But here, I'm sure everyone has one main question. Donald Trump has announced a blockade of the Hormuz Strait. But why would the United States of America block the Hormuz Strait if it's already blocked by Iran? Plus, this would hit the Persian Gulf countries even harder. What's the idea behind such a blockade, and what would it actually achieve? That's very interesting. Let's discuss it right now. The point is that technically the Hormuz Strait is not closed. Iran is gradually allowing some tankers through in exchange for a fee of up to $2 million for each vessel. And what's especially important is that throughout the entire war, Iran ensured the unhindered flow of its oil to and from the region. In other words, Iran continued to trade oil. The point is that Iran created a situation where only it could trade oil. The other Persian Gulf countries couldn't sell their oil. And then, as you know, Donald Trump lifted the sanctions on Iranian oil right in the middle of the war. As a result, during the war, Iran increased its oil supplies by 100,000 barrels per day, reaching almost 2 million barrels a day. Therefore, by blocking the Strait of Hormuz, Trump could have cut off a key source of Iranian funding. This is a lever that the Trump administration has not yet dared to use. After all, blocking the strait, even just for Iranian oil, could lead to a sharp rise in oil and gasoline prices around the world. Because no matter what, Iranian oil was covering part of the world's demand. That's exactly why the US Navy allowed Iranian tankers to pass through this region. And the Americans kind of turned a blind eye to the fact that Iran was not just continuing to trade, but actually increasing its oil trade during the war. I'll say it again, because Trump also lifted the sanctions on them. And any oil exported from the region right now can at least partially help restrain the rise in oil prices, and that was kind of the calculation. The Trump administration, let me remind you, blocked the sale of Iranian oil since it withdrew from the Iranian nuclear deal in 2018. Donald Trump's decision to lift sanctions on Iranian oil last month, again in the midst of the war, released a significant amount of oil. That's 140 million barrels. Well, that's according to official data. And according to the US Energy Information Administration, that's enough to meet the entire world's oil demand for about 1.5 days. Well, I emphasize again, that's the total. But Trump's decision had the opposite effect from that. Lifting the sanctions allowed Iran to sell its oil, which had previously been under sanctions, to finance the war against whom? The United States of America and their allies. And Iran was making significant profits from these sales, selling oil at a premium of several dollars above the price of Brent crude oil. Yes, that's what war is like. So, Trump starts the war, an oil crisis is created. And to at least partially solve this crisis, what does he do? He goes and lifts sanctions on the adversary, something that wasn't even done before the war. Besides, as you remember, Trump was so desperate to stabilize the oil market that he even lifted sanctions on Russian oil. And here comes a very dangerous moment. The thing is, the temporary lifting of sanctions against Russian oil expired on April 11, as you all know. But up until now, up to the moment of recording this episode, the United States Department of the Treasury still hasn't announced whether they are extending the lifting of sanctions on Russian oil or not. Because Trump previously mentioned that in principle they wouldn't be bringing the sanctions back. That is, he says, we lifted the sanctions on Russian oil at sea, but most likely we won't be bringing them back. There are no updates on the US Department of the Treasury's website right now. But what is known from insider information is that Donald Trump and US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent agreed to extend the lifting of sanctions back on April 9. The Trump administration very often makes such decisions not through loud presidential announcements, but through technical updates of general licenses on the US Department of the Treasury's website, quietly. This allows them to avoid unnecessary criticism of aiding the Kremlin. And usually, only after a few days do journalists figure out whether something was extended or not. And, let's not forget that such licenses are updated on business days, and today is Sunday, plus it's Easter for the Orthodox, so most likely this license will be extended on Monday after all. And most importantly, traders and major importers, for example in India, continue their operations to purchase Russian oil, being confident that the green light from Washington has been given and it won't go out anytime soon. Well, in a situation where Trump is going to block Iranian oil supplies, he will definitely extend the lifting of sanctions against Russia just to hold back the price increase at least a little. And today, April 12, Trump assured that as soon as the war ends, gas prices will quickly return to pre-war levels. That's what he said, just like that. That's a lie. I won't elaborate, but economists say it doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, even when the war is over, the Strait of Hormuz is unblocked and so on, there will still be quite a long period needed for recovery. But by blocking the Strait of Hormuz, Trump risks driving oil and gas prices even higher in order to maximize pressure on Iran and achieve an end to the war. And here I want to recommend that you definitely watch my episode from yesterday, where I immediately said that the negotiations between the US and Iran in Pakistan are just a cover for an even larger military operation, which is now unfolding. And right now, Trump says that the United States and other countries will send minesweepers to the Hormuz Strait to clear areas mined by Iran. Quote, We have minesweepers there. Right now we have high-tech underwater minesweepers, the most modern and the best, but we are also purchasing more traditional minesweepers. And as far as I understand, the United Kingdom and several other European countries are sending minesweepers there as well. Well, besides that, Trump assures that now the Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, and so on, are, you could say, much closer now. And now they are simply forced to enter the war because it's in their interest to unblock the strait. Quote, Oh yes, the Persian Gulf state, you could say, is much closer, so they might have to do it. But, they could have stayed out of it, but Iran made a mistake and started firing rockets at them. That's an interesting hint that, most likely, there are negotiations going on for the Emirates or Saudi Arabia to actually join the war against Iran, at least to unblock the Hormuz Strait. But what's also important is that at the time of recording this episode, according to Vortex, a company that tracks ships, only 2 empty tankers heading to the Hormuz Strait have turned around. After it became known on Sunday that the negotiations between the US and Iran ended without reaching a long-term peace agreement, which tells us that at the moment the Hormuz Strait is still under control. But let's see what Donald Trump will do, because, for example, the Democrats in the United States right now, frankly speaking, don't understand the strategy. What's the logic? What's the idea? So, what's next? Well, okay, the US really can block the Hormuz Strait for everyone pretty quickly. Iran won't be able to trade, but who knows how much resilience Iran has. And how do you open the strait? Because now essentially there are 2 sides, and both are blocking the strait. And how do you open it? This question remains unresolved, so I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so financially with any donation or paid subscription using the links and details in the description of this video or by scanning the QR code on your screen. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.